my name is Courtney James, and I'm here with Gary Lohman, the VPX of Mile Metals, and Patrick Cruickshank, the CEO and Director. Hello to both of you.
Good morning, Courtney.
Hello, Miss Courtney.
Thank you so much for joining me today, you guys. We're going to dive right into it. You have recently put out news discussing the assays that came back, and they were showing 0.44% copper over 136.1 meters, as well as some other levels of zinc throughout. So, Gary, I was just hoping that you could chat a little bit about what these numbers are and what you've been finding.
Yes, this was a very successful hole. With a width like that, that's mineralized with copper and zinc mineralization, we were quite impressed with even looking at the drill core. There's visible chalcopyrite and salarite throughout, and occasionally some galena where the lead was visible. At the base of the hole was a 40-meter section of 1.32 copper, and that was primarily massive sulfide or more massive sulfide in there, and that also carried some good zinc and silver numbers. I'm finding when I look through the chemistry that there's good correlation between the higher grade copper and the silver, and it's usually the silver is usually assaying around 1 to 2 ounces. And the zinc, we're finding with the results, the zinc is a separate zone from the copper. There is some relation, but there are separate little zones of high-grade zinc, as you saw from the numbers, where we're hitting assays of 27% in individual bands. So it's quite impressive. It's a really nice start.
That's great to hear. And so you've been down on the ground working with the crew. What's the kind of sentiment? Is everyone in good spirits and enjoying the process? How are the weather conditions? Like some of the things that have been limiting us before.
Surprisingly, we just got more snow in the last few days than we did most of the winter.
Oh, good. Okay.
Everything had melted, and everything had melted, but it's now back to winter conditions. But
oh my gosh.
as you can see, I'm in Toronto right now. I just took a few days off. The crew's been working, and there'll be lots of samples to ship out as soon as I'm back, if they haven't already gone.
That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to hearing what it's like out there. I feel like every time we do these interviews, there's always been a new fresh dump of snow out there. So it's
Yeah.
maybe spring will welcome us nicely.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And then Patrick, kind of hopping over to you here. I know that some people have been talking about why hole 2 we're looking at before hole 1. So I was just wondering if you could provide some context on that.
Sure. I'll just have one quick comment on the crew's sentiment. When I talk to them, I know we have a good hole when they're complaining about how heavy the boxes are before we even seen them. So taking them out the truck and the deliveries from the rig, we know that's a great sign that we know we have mineralization. So I'm like, hey, it's a good workout for you guys. But so everyone's got to remember, so the assay process is we're lucky to have a prep lab in Moncton, which is very close and very affordable to ship our samples to. So what we do is we cut our core in half, and we try our best to visually do an A and a B sample that is pretty accurately the same. We don't overweight one or the other from the outside of the core. We ship them down to Moncton, and you got to appreciate with 136 meters of samples, and every one is in a 1 meter, roughly a 1 meter bag with a tag and so on. That's 136 bags, multiple buckets, multiple packaging. It's a prep lab, so they will crush it into pulps there, and then ship it to one of their processing assay labs in the country, whether it's North Van or, I may get these wrong, Timmins or Kamloops or wherever it is in the country. They'll look at what turns around as quickly, so they can invoice as fast as possible. The problem with that and the challenge is the whole gets separated. Okay, so you might get 30 bags going to one location because that's the size of their shipping process, and 30 go over here. So the very simple reason hole 2 was announced first, it's the first complete hole we have had returned from the assay process.
Right.
Hole 1 is not back, as of I know right now, complete. So we don't want to go and if we have 3/4 of hole back and go announce, well, let's just do what we've got so far. For QA/QC, we want to have the complete hole to give the market the complete picture, and no interpretation that way. So that is the sole reason hole 2 came back first, and it's complete, because then what Gary has to do is all the samples are anonymous. They just have a sample number. It doesn't say hole this, hole that, and it's shipped out. They're all indifferent to support so it's not a tainted response, right? So nobody knows, not even the lab knows what hole you're working on, and it all comes back. Then Gary has to put all the samples for each hole back together, and that's how we know if it's complete or not. So, and then do all the weighted calculations on that hole, because some samples may be a perfect meter, some may be 0.85, some might be 1.05. We got to do the weighted averages back to 1 common denominator. So one sample doesn't overweight another because it's higher grade, but half a meter. So that takes days. So it's taking a week or so to get our press release out once we get all the samples back, and that process on our end is not quick. It's a good problem. I mean, if it was a 10-meter assay, that would be much quicker, but 136 is a good problem to have. So it takes time. Hole 1, I believe, is in the 50s meters that we sampled, and I think hole 4 was in the 70s. So we are doing our best to get it turned around as fast as possible, as complete and accurate as possible. So we are playing catch up, because if you recall, this program are shorter holes, and it's very, very quickly you get backlogged on our internal process of logging, photographing, identifying, cutting, sampling, and shipping. Obviously, that takes a lot longer than the rig does to drill, 200-meter hole. So we are catching. We are continuing.
Somebody they need to invent a rig that drills and samples at the same time. That could be the next idea. Does anyone want to invest in that?
Maybe our own rig. Maybe our own rig would be a good investment. You know, and modify it so we can use track mount in the winter. That would be a great investment.
Well, that's good.
But it is interesting, Gary. Maybe we can talk to the market here about, the historical information. So I just want to put out there that we did acquire historical data finally. We did not get it from Tech or who purchased Caminco. That's why it was a bit of a surprise after we had already started this program. But it's significant data, drill logs from surface and from subsurface, and we have started that modeling and process of digitizing all that so we can model it in 3D, and then we'll add our holes, and then we should have a very good picture of what was there historically, plus what EarthX and what we believe are extensions and new zones and new areas. So that is kind of want everyone to know that is the overall objective here with the technical data. So
yeah, the 3D model will let us not only model just the assays plus the rock types. And I've just looked through the data. Caminco at that time was assaying just copper, lead, zinc, silver, and occasionally there would be gold, whereas we're doing 31 element ICP. So we've got a good sort of chemical signature for everything. And looking even through the data that we've got on the few holes that have been returned, or the data that's been returned, we can see certain elements track with each other. Elevated copper will have maybe a little higher arsenic. There's bismuth, there's some antimony. And that may, not that they're economic, but that may help us with the exploration, because those elements are, especially something like arsenic, an arsenic bump, that's a fairly mobile element. So if you're doing any soil geochemistry and something like that, you'll be able to track that and hopefully some additional copper. But getting the assays, all the chemistry and the rock types modeled will be a great asset going forward.
Amazing.
I mean, everybody's got to remember our mandate for this program was to test EarthX's targets, late time conductive, high priority responses, and also we believe that the deposit has a bigger footprint, and that's why we have target area 1, which is southeast, and target 2 northwest. We were limited in going how far west we could into the hills and so on, and then test the depth. So obviously these holes are this hole specifically is proving out what is unmined, what tonnage is left potentially, and new areas that Caminco never mined, and show that this has much bigger presence. And that's how you can see it with these kind of 136-meter zones, whether they're stringers or massive sulfides, etc. It's showing the size of this system. And you're probably going to see this backwards, but if the lens traditionally was like that, we're hitting this area. We believe it may be a different shape and so on. That's kind of what we're trying to prove out.
Yeah, and also that these holes are sort of infill compared to Caminco. Their hole spacing was fairly wide,
Right.
and it was more concentrated, I'd say, to the west. And as they got east, there was wider spacing and less holes. So we'll be filling in, and hopefully, like Patrick said, the mandates to expand the footprint of this, the mineralization and the deposit.
And so far,
Now, there
it
is
seems
a
like
challenge for Gary on these holes and also on our targets and what we're doing, because when you're drilling a previously producing mine, you got to stay away from mined voids, right?
Right.
Like if you were to drill and hit an open cavity, I mean, you need the water in the drill hole for the drill bit. That hole would be have to be abandoned. So we're taking so it's going to be a process to look at the old model and the old holes, but then obviously try to interpret what has been mined out, right?
Right.
So we're trying to extend it and look for new zones, and then combine it with EarthEX's exploration techniques and processes there to look at new areas that they have not even drilled. So the snow should be gone by May.
Fingers crossed.
But even traditionally April is the melting season, so it's so muddy and stuff. You don't do any drilling and any work. It's just too much of an issue.
Just make a mess.
We'll get caught up in April and be far into the reprocessing of all the technical data and drill data that we have. And I think, Gary, there's over 160 holes or something. Like it's a massive
276, including the underground.
Right.
So
yeah.
You guys will be busy.
Yeah.
Gary will be busy.
Gary will be very busy. Well, this is a great update from both of you. Is there anything that the community should look forward to in the next couple of weeks here?
Gary, why don't you talk on the process left in this program first?
Yeah, we've just, like Patrick mentioned, it's catch up right now. That the crew's working, and it's just the saw's running, 8 to 10 hours a day.
Right.
And I'd say, even by my estimates, there's a lot more cutting than I actually thought we'd be doing. These are, from what I've seen coming up, there's a fair bit of mineralization left to go. So it's just going to take time to do it properly, get it off to the lab, and then, like Patrick said, once the modeling is in and we can look at everything, then we can plan phase 2. And not only there, but I was going to say also, like target 2 in areas that were inaccessible during the winter.
We'll start planning to get back up there.
I mean, it's fantastic a time to have this break in April, because not only can we evaluate this program and the historical data, we have other high priority targets like target 6, the West Wedge and the Tri-Bag, which is a long trend west of the Wedge Mine, and we haven't been able to drill out west. So again, taking all this data, putting it back into our roadmap, and then reprioritized or confirm the priority targets, moving forward. The one thing I'll talk about, just from a corporate standpoint is, you know, there has been a lot of questions and phone calls about why aren't you drilling deeper and all these things. It's like, originally, you got to remember, we have our flow through funding. We now have access to this data to model and get a much better picture and de-risk the existing, because remember, we were pretty much blind starting this process. So from a corporate standpoint, it doesn't make sense to drill massive deep holes when you know you have this trove of data to process and get a picture. So from a corporate standpoint, we kept the holes not shallow, but once we went through the mineralized zones and then we hit sediments, and Gary, you can comment, that's kind of the other side. So we decide very quickly to cut, save the meters, save the dollars, and then we will have a cumulative summary with the historic and ours, and again, do a much better forecast for where to spend all those dollars going forward.
Sure.
And now we shouldn't have any access problems, and really the number one targets after this analysis will go first, right, which could be on the west. So that was a business decision, and also till we model this, trying to figure out where the mined voids will be in a void, right, because that would just be lost dollars.
Yeah.
So that's just more of a corporate budgeting and exploration execution comment for going forward, and then, you know, we still have to evaluate California hole 10 and trend number 10 and other targets and come back to folks. But we are very excited and very pleased with the Wedge and EarthEX's technology, and it's proving out as we're going.
Yeah.
You know, we're probably more anxious than our viewers and investors are. For I know they're anxious. I mean, we see it, right? So we're anxious to get these numbers back, and I wish they'd come in order, and I wish they'd come complete. And unfortunately, they're not playing with us that way.
Yeah.
Well, so Gary, get back there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, I know. As we're talking, I'm getting my core cutter sending me pictures of mineralization he's seeing in the drill core.
You're just getting all excited to get back.
And I'll just comment one more time on the process, just so the viewers know, is management and so on. We are waiting until Gary has a complete whole picture and a full analysis before he shares it with management. So from a QA QC, it's a complete picture versus, well, here's this, here's that, because, you know, they're cutting and everything can be out of order, but we're waiting till we get the complete. So we have a qualified comment to anyone that calls and so on like that. So we have the complete picture. It's just with all these meters and all these holes, it's much better to have everything coming complete by hole from Gary and his team. So
and I think
you've had a week in real society, and now it's time to go back to your cave and get back.
That's it. And I'll just add on to Patrick's comment too, that like I say, we're cutting a lot more core than I'd say I anticipated, because where you got the massive mineralization and it's visible, yeah, great. We see that, but there's also long zones of very fine disseminated mineralization that looks like just pyrite, iron pyrite. But with the XRF, we have copper with it. So that's just where we have a lot of sulfide mineralization. It's just playing safe, getting it all cut and analyzed, so we don't miss anything.
Yeah, no, good thorough search.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for this update. I know it's, you know, provide some great insight on what's been going on with the project and what we have to look forward to coming up here.
Okay.
Thanks for having us,
Courtney.
Okay, enjoy your trip back to New Brunswick, Gary, and we'll chat later, Patrick.
Okay. Bye.